Excellent, welcome Julie. Let me just see where I'm up to. Currently this is deciding that it's not going to share for me. It's always a helpful activity, but there we are. Hopefully we can get that sorted. Let me just see if I can pick it up alternatively to get it shared into here. Do you like it when a plan comes together? There we are. Okay. No, it's deciding it's not going to, but that's okay. Julie, if you wouldn't mind sharing it to my page, that would be much appreciated. Oops, let's just turn that noise down. There we are. Cool. Yeah. Sometimes I do wonder about what goes on in the book, but there we are. There we are. Oh, we've got a few more people joining in. Hi, Jan. Hi, Julie. Thank you so much for joining me. Did anyone watch the Little Birdie show on Hobby Maker? Because it wasn't really a Little Birdie show. It was quite interesting to watch. And I shall behave and say no more. Because sometimes I need to behave, really. There we are. Okie, let's just wait a little bit and see who else might come in and join us. It's never quite guaranteed on a Sunday afternoon. It's quite warm now and quite sunny, but we did have some pretty grotty weather earlier on today. So let's just see what is going to go on. Good afternoon, Sue. So we're going to have a play. This is sort of almost a bit more. Thank you, Jan. Did you share it to my page, darling? If you wouldn't mind, I'd be much appreciated. I've pared this demo right back for a whole host. That's interesting because it wouldn't let me either, so I'm assuming it is the Booker Face that's doing what it's doing. That's an interesting concept. Well, we're all in the same boat then, aren't we? Well, let's see how many people manage to join, because that means they're going to have to join through the event, which might cause some people to be a little bit confused. But hey ho, I do sometimes wonder. Anyway, I've cleared this. Thank you for trying though, my darling. I have pared this back quite a lot for a whole host of reasons, partly because I think it's sometimes going back to basics is a really good thing to do. So I have a plain wooden chair. Oh, thank you, Jan. Thank you. Liz, could you try sharing it to my page, darling? Or whether it's my page that's the problem. Who will know? So this is just a plain wooden tray. They're fairly cheap to get hold of. That I have primed with pentart acrylic primer. You could just as easily have used gesso for this, but I wouldn't use bonding primer because this is a porous surface, and I quite often use these when I'm prepping for my lives. And then we're going to do some activities around the rice paper, because I watched a rice paper show the other day, and well, my heart went the projects work very nicely for the lady, but maybe it's not quite, for many of us it wouldn't get what the effects that we perhaps were hoping for. So I just thought that I would use some of the beautiful Ciao Bella flower shop rice papers that I will have on Create and Craft. No, not on Create and Craft, on Hobby Maker on the 12th of July. Let me see where that fold is going to approximately go through. There we are. I can always trim back a bit extra. There we are. And you think you're using a blade. And I have used a blade, and you'd be going, really? Thank you, Liz. Thank you. Hi, Gillian. And that's because I want this to butt up against the edges. So I'm wanting a straight line, and in fact I might have to trim just a little bit more off there. That can go into there, that can go into there. Let me just pop that into there, make a fold. There we are. Let's just reinforce that fold line. So I'm not wanting it to go up the sides of the piece. There we are. So let's just take a pair of scissors. So that is why I am choosing to cut this in the way that I'm cutting this side, because I want it to fit neatly into the recesses. Now you could glue it down, let it dry, and then take a knife to set it down, to take it off the return bits, but I make a mess when I do that. So I just find when I want a straight edge, it's easier for me to cut a straight edge, she says, making a wobbly edge. But hey ho, there we are. Thank you, Julie. So that from that point of view. But clearly, when I pop this on my tray now, I have an edge here, or either which way, that I might not want it as a straight edge, and I'm going to need to blend in. And to blend and balance my mediums, then it's going to be much easier if I just take a little wet brush. Let's find a clean wet brush, one that one in the but is for bin because it's solid. There we are. And I'm just going to wriggle down here with some water. So all I've done is literally some plain water onto here. There we are. And that's going to then, so I've put my fingers on the side I want to protect, and I'm pulling away, and this way I've got complete control of what I take off, or so the plan is. Okay, so we've got lots of tips and tricks to share today. And these papers are gorgeous, they really are. So let me just, and then we're going to do some bits and some pieces. We'll see where we get to. So literally just doing that. Pop that on. Hi Faith. Horrible day here again in Glasgow. Well, it was pretty vile first thing this morning in the wet and rainy city of Manchester. There we are. But actually, currently, I'm in the conservatory and it's really quite warm and nice. So there we are. So we have some decoupage glue and varnish. So this is the matte one. It's my go-to, but you could use whatever you wanted, and it will clear it in. And I think I'm going to pop this deliberately off centre. Now, one of my gripes with a lot of rice papers is that they are, as this one was, portrait style, and trays, to my mind, get used landscape style. So it's all, you know, you can get landscape orientated rice papers, but they're not as easily available. There's definitely far more that are trying, you know, are the opposite way. So let us just pop this into here. Let's just put a nice good layer of my glue down. Now, this is a wood item, so it will soak in. So just be aware, you need a generous layer. I haven't gone far enough over. There we are. So let's just pop that into there. I'm going to pop this in. Anchor that down where I want it. So that's right butted up to that edge neatly, not going up. There we are. And then I can flick this back and then add lot more glue and roll the rice paper down, and then we'll seal it. And whilst that is drying, we'll carry on with what we're going to with some of the other stuff, because that's just what's needed. There we are. Okay, cool. So let's just roll that down neatly, just gently pop it down, avoiding air bubbles and creases. You don't want to have lots of creases when you're doing things like this. You want a nice smooth flat surface. If you don't end up with a smooth flat surface, then there are ways around it, but it requires you to put several layers of varnish on, rub back, put more layers of varnish on, rub back, and that's all very well and good. So I love these papers. As I say, it's Flower Shop by Ciao Bella. I have a rice paper show on the 12th of July with all of the rice papers from the collection, which is cool, and you'll be able to choose the rice papers from the collection that you want. We haven't prescribed a set amount. And then the lovely Sharon Curtis has on the 8th of July has the paper collection. So if you haven't seen the paper collection, or you've been tempted by the looks of it, then it might well be worth you checking that out on the telly box. And as always, I am keeping my brush marks in one direction. I'm not going up, down, higgledy-piggledy, scribbly, scrunchy, because any of the marks, any of the thicknesses of the glue will ultimately show through. But I do want a nice layer to seal this in. Don't want obviously big globs, but I do want to have a decent layer to seal this in, because that means that I can, when I'm adding colour later on to as and blur the edges, then I can it's more easy to do that, and I've not got, as I say, anything that's going to worry me. So that can now sit over there to dry. Now I've got a nice big area here and an area up there, and those areas. So I'm going to show you how we can take other rice papers and then blend them in to the backgrounds. So this is another rice paper from the collection, so let me just take that and give it a little wash. And I'm thinking that we might have, oh, I didn't want to put that in the glue, that won't work. Hello Blanche, yes, let's just shovel that into dry. That pot is very mucky. So let's just add some water to the edges and pull out some of these pieces, and then we can do a little bit of layering around. So let's just pull out some of these, and we've got some tricks, because tricks are good, aren't they? Tricks are very good. So there we are. Let's just pull that one out. I think that's going to work quite nicely, and I can be very careful. I don't need to worry now about damaging the piece, the images either side. I can be very specific in what I'm taking out. I will pull some of this off because of what I want to do with it. Just protect that little butterfly. There we are. And now I can come in and just pinch out some more of that white space. When you hear it rip, you know it's not wet enough. There we are. So I can see that needs a bit of water on it, adding into it to come into there, to pull that extra piece off. There we are. Goody goody, thanks Blanche. Yeah, they're Flower Shop by Ciao Bella, and they are beautiful, beautiful, beautiful papers. They've got, pretty might not work for everyone, but yeah. Right. She says, having torn her piece where she doesn't want to, but that's okay. Cool. So let me just pop this onto here. Now these are semi-translucent, so when if I pop that onto there, I should be able to see the colour behind. Yes, it's going to have a bit of a halo, but that's not going to overtly worry me. Let me just, so we can pop a little bit more glue here. But again, it's just blurring that edge, and I will be able to see through. So that's always helpful. There we are. There we are. Good. So that can go on there. And I think I might want possibly a little birdhouse to hang down from there, or possibly another piece to hang from down up here. So let's just take this piece out. We've got some more water. So I'm beginning to build up imagery around that square. And this means that I won't have to completely rely on painting to disguise my edges. There will be some painting involved. It's inevitable. I don't want a white base. There we are. Let's just pop this. But it should show that you can layer your rice papers, and you can change what you're doing to have make your imagery work for you. There we are. So let's just pop that over there. Oh dear, she says sniffly snuffly. That's not good, is it? I do apologise, ladies. Let's just take that piece out of there. Okie dokie. And do I want that into there? Well, I might have taken that out and then decide that I don't want to pop it all into there because I don't like it. So there you are. That's a women's prerogative, isn't it? But I've got some butterflies. So there we are. We might take some of those at another point. That's the bottom. That's the bottom. That's the top. But I don't like those flowers because they've been put on upside down, and my OCD says that that's not right. So we'll leave that like that for the moment, and we're going to tackle some of the other painting while that dries. So as I say, this is a wooden tray, and I have already primed it with acrylic primer. Let me just grab a blade, and then I can open this. So this is just ivory matte acrylic because it's fresh. And I'm not using that for the inside anyway, I'm using it for the outside of my piece. And yeah, I could have done some of the prepping of this up front, but hey ho, I decided that I wasn't going to. We were going to do a start to finish. It won't take forever. There we are. And hopefully take some of the fear factor out of doing some of these things. We'll paint the undersurface off. Oh, she says, I do apologise if that's just made anyone go wobbly horrible. don't you worry. I think that Facebook is having a bit of a nightmare today, darling. So here we are. Let's just pop this back on camera. It's a big piece. So if I pop that there, it's multi-sided, so it's difficult to wiggle around. So let's just pop that into there. Let's just pop that into there. Do the inside of there. Wipe out the brush strokes. And as I say, the undersurface, I will quite happily do off camera because I can. And there are lots of different tricks you can use for disguising edges, so we will use some of them on all of this. So let me just turn that around. Oops. And I can paint the inside of there. So this wasn't an expensive tray. I think it came as a set with lots of different ones for a while ago. There we are. So let's just pop that, she says, around there. And then we can add around the top. And then we might need to give that a little bit of a glass dry. And we might add some of the other pieces on the sides. We'll see how we feel. This tray is not very deep, so it's not necessarily, there we are, going to work terribly well for adding lots of image. I think it will be a lovely project when it's finished. So let me just pop that into there. Let's just give this a wee bit of a blast. Because I now need all of this to be dried inside. And I can see that I'm minus colour. And I'll explain why I've just said I'm minus a colour when I've got this bit dry enough to work with. I'll show you the colours that I've picked out so you understand my thought processes. While that is drying, so I've looked at the background here on my edges of my papers. Thank you, Sylvia. And I have picked out this paint because I think it's quite a good mix, and it is vintage yellow. I've picked out a creamy white because there's creamy white there, and I have picked out a blue, but that's just something different. And I've got my ivory. But I've got nothing that vaguely matches that. So whilst that is sitting there, I am just going to go and pick up my vintage brown. So the key... She says not being able to see the vintage brown. But that one will work. This one, so this is red brown, and by the time I lighten it, I can get it to that colour. Okay, so the paper is a rice paper from Ciao Bella paper from one of their recent releases, Flower Shop. And I now need to get this reasonably dry. Because if I don't, we'll have a hot mess as we start moving stuff around. And the glue doesn't act as a very good varnish. I've clearly got some bright glue from something else there. We'll worry about that and tackle it, because I can see a bright blue splodge. I clearly had something else next to it. There we are. Let's get this dry. I can see a little bit of glue there. It's still a little bit tacky. So there we are. I'll pop that there. Okay, cool. So let's just clear some of this extra stuff out of the way and grab a tray. Okay, so I want a mixture of colours because that's what's going to allow me to blend nicely. Okay, so I'm going to take some of my vintage yellow. Let's just wipe that off there so I don't contaminate my pots. I'm trying to make myself behave and pot lid my pot. So that is cream white, not off-white. The off-white from Pentart is grey. It's a very beautiful grey, but it's definitely grey. And let's just take just a little bit, tiny bit, because we're not going to need very much of this. Of that, and then I can lid these, and I might regret not taking out more, but that's fine. So we've now got some of these. That's reasonably dry, so I'm just going to pop those onto there, and let's take some scrubble brushes that won't matter very much if I cream crackle them, and some sponges. The small sizes will work. Okay, so this brown is clearly not right for that, which at the moment, so let us just do a little bit of colour mixing because that's what's needed. So let's just take a good dewatch of that and a tiny bit of that. At least shade wise it is. Alright, so that's too pale, so we can add in a bit more of that. And that's still too pale, but that's okay. There we are. Oh, that looks like it might be a better colour. That looks like it might be much better colour. Excellent. It'll do. It's not a perfect match, but that's okay because we take things on and off. And let's just take some of that, mix it with that, and soften down that green. That's going to be a better mix, I think. There we are. There we are. So we've then got colours that approximate into that, and you can mix as much or as little as you want. So before I drop that everywhere, I'm just going to pop that over there. So I've got a little area here. I've not got a big area that I want to disguise, but I can, by coming into the paper and tapping it out, start that transition. And don't be afraid to take your paints onto the papers, because that will actually help disguise what's going on. Don't want it on the top there. There we are. We can take that onto there. So we're linking the side of our paper into our project. Okay, let's give that a little bit of a wipe. Okay, and then we're going to add in, and we can mix these up. And by doing this, picking up little bits, and when there's very little left on my brush, I can take it over and just tap it into that paper. So it's the blending is the key to disguising the edges and being happy to take it on to the surfaces of what you're doing. I want a bigger area there, so I don't need to tap it into this bit. I've got clearly a much bigger area that needs to cover. We can build in our colours as we go. So let's just take some of that white, and this way I'm going to add lots of tone, lots of different shades. And here again I'm going to take it onto the edges. I don't particularly want a white halo. And your fingers will help you blur in, because they'll leave just a very thin layer of paint where you want it, and so the areas where it doesn't currently match because it's white will then get lost. There we are. And where I've tapped it and I've got edges, I'm just now breaking those edges down. So let's pop it into here. There we are. And I'm not going to worry too much about the florals. We'll just put some suggestion that we might have some colour up on here. But the bulk of this now is going to be done with the greens, and I might well then add some ivory in. So I'm just adding gently, 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 tapping out the edges, flipping out the marks, but building some colour in, disguising my edges. So I can see that there's an area of the paper now that really is quite creamy tucked in this corner. Don't you worry, Jill, don't you worry. Let's just take some of that cream, pop a big dollop of it over there. It's a big pot, and we'll use it. We will use it. Right. So let's wipe off some of that. Hi Miriam, welcome my darling. Welcome, welcome. So I've got there we are. So this is about what looks ultimately aesthetically pleasing to you. There isn't necessarily a right, there isn't necessarily a wrong, and it's about building colours gradually. So let me just take that, and because I have my varnish on here, I can then lift that off that top of that house where I don't want it. There we are. And we'll carry on, and we can come back and change the colours of that. And we're going to add some stenciling, we're going to add some stamping. And I'm taking the stamping elements and the stencil out from the papers itself. There we are. So that you wouldn't necessarily know that I haven't, that the paper's stopped. You might, but that's okay too. There we are. Let's just take some of that soften some of those colours down, and if I don't like that I can come back ultimately and add to it. So there we are, let's just come into here. So this is just a little bit of a labour of love, and this is why I wanted to do this up front. I didn't want to be, you know, disguising the fact that colour blending takes a bit of time and effort, but it's worth it in the end. So don't go onto your papers with a heavily loaded paintbrush, go in with something that is lightly loaded. And because I'm mixing wet into wet, I will get lots of different shading, because my background paper is definitely not all one colour. It builds up the layers. So that cream white I'm going to take here, just blend it in to those edges. There we are. So it's helping. Don't like that bit there, so let's just add that bit onto there. So bit by bit you can see that my edges are blurring in. Hello Sophie, my darling. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I haven't seen you online for a little bit, so let's just take some of this, that darker, the vintage yellow, that's definitely not vintage yellow, but a green. There we are. And we can tap away. I'm going to take some of that brown into that corner. It's not going to stay that brown, it's going to get mixed in with some of the green, but it will help disguise that edge really quite well. I'm just dry brushing some colour into those. Okay, so we've still got an area here that needs to be covered, and by taking the paint onto the rice paper, I'm blurring out that edge complete, you know, as much as I possibly can. I find colour blending relaxing. I don't know that everyone does, but I certainly do. So let's just take some of this paler colour, and as I say, ultimately it's what works for you. Sorry, I don't understand why that's just being there, but hey ho, there we are. So I put this at an angle, hopefully you can then see a bit more about what I'm doing. And I've deliberately got a scrubby brush because it's going to allow me to mix the colours far more easily. Now I know I've got some of that very pale browny colour tucked into there, so I'm just going to mix these in so that the two become one. And if I just lift this off, where I'm not happy where it's joining, I can just brush that down and help disguise that edge. So we're now back into an area that is more green. So this literally is a question of looking at what's on the paper immediately now where you're working. So here on the paper I've definitely got more cream, possibly a little bit of that tan into it. So let's just carry that through. I'm never going to manage to completely blur in that plant, but that's okay, I can live with that. Let me just soften that edge. There we are. So fingers is useful. just swipe that back. There we are. And because I've got a nice good layer of my decoupage glue and varnish over there, I'm really not struggling to lift off that paint. So let's just take some of this darker, pop it into here, and let's just carry on, because now I am off the main focus of what I was doing. So actually it doesn't matter what I do, as long as I'm happy that it sort of looks right. So those white areas now that were part of the background of that watering can is no longer visible. So that's cool. Let's just add some of these into here, and then we can pop some of this onto here. Just fade it through. There we are. So I'm just mixing where I've got layers of colour. To add in. So I'm thinking I might pop some more of this reddy brown pinky colour, almost like blusher, isn't it? There we are, into here, to take some of that colour out from here into the rest of the piece. Because it will help again link the two pieces together. I don't want any hard lines, so hence the tapping motions. There we are, we've got some of that darker green left on there, so we'll just use what we've got now on our plate to build in these areas. But it's not, it takes a little bit of time, but it's not difficult. There isn't a right, there isn't a wrong, and you're never going to really get it exactly the same. So as long as you're happy and content that when you look at it, you can't, your edges are pretty disguised, then so I've definitely got an edge there, but it's actually edge from paint that's too thick. So let me just block this out, blur it through. So I've got little bits of paint on my brush rather than lots of paint. I just felt that was too solid a colour there. As I say, it's not going to stay like it anyway. So there we are. So let's just fill in this obvious area that we've got here. I'm off the painting, so it doesn't matter if I actually brush that. So I've used very few colours, but I've got infinite numbers of shades just by mixing stuff through. And by over painting lightly, again I'm helping to blur those edges. I've still got an area here that I'm not overly happy with. Let me just tap off some of that. Get rid of some of that. And add in some of this white or this cream. Okay, cool. Well, that's not so bad. Right, now then, what did I have out? So I've got some bits and pieces here. So let's just give this a little blast dry. Hi Anya, welcome, welcome. I'm looking forward to your decoupage queen Andrew Skinner makes tomorrow. I think it was tomorrow you said you were going to be doing it on Stampert. They are truly stunning, stunning papers. Now we could stamp with paint, but we're not going to. I'm going to use an archival ink to add just a little bit more detail in. But you can see that's no, not quite dry. So now, see on camera, I think you would be very hard pressed to say where the rice paper was and where the paint started. For me, there's an area here because there's a hard end of text, and we're going to sort that out now. And similarly over here, we've got in this paper little bits of crackle, little bits of script. So let's just start adding some of this in. So I've taken my colours from my paper background onto the tray, and then need to move some of the imagery now from the papers that way, if that makes sense. So colour, we're just repeating the process. And there is some white stamping into amongst all of this, and we might have to do that with some of the white paint, but we'll go from there. So so I've got an archival ink here. I don't necessarily want it to be first generation stamping because I think that might be a little bit harsh. So let me just grab a bit of scrap paper and pop that off to the side. So I've got my text, generic, sort of looks a bit like that text from a stamp from a long ago. I've got an almost dry ink pad, which, yeah, that helps matters hugely. Okay, so now I can start to add just some extra little bits, and the almost dry ink pad is definitely helping. Oops, she says. There we are. So that's going to help. So I don't want it to be readable. I don't need it to be readable. But I'm just adding that little bit of text, and because I've got the text covering where I'm going from, it's going to help get rid of some of those areas. There we are. It's always difficult getting into edges. There we are. So that little bit of text stamping really does start to change things. I've just got one area there. There we are. So it stops it, and I can pop a little bit more onto there. Looking samey. And I've got a crackle stamp. So we're going to add some random areas of crackle. And yes, I know I'm putting that on the paper. So I'm linking, again, I'm linking my layers. we are. Let's just pop another little bit into there. Okay. So that to me works quite nicely. That is an archival ink, so that will work quite well. So now we've got the thorny issue of the edges of this tray, which we can leave completely plain. But we could just, because as I said, I didn't like those up that way, just add some little bits of additional stuff. So let's go back to our water, and then it's just cut out this. Remember, this is the top of that rice paper. So let's just scribble that off. We can sand off some edges, that's okay. So that's clearly going to be too big, and that is also just fine, because we can file off the excess, and I'm going to deliberately put it over there and bend it around the corner. And this is the joy of rice papers. When, oops, she says, let me move me back into camera for you. Okay, so that is just a scrap of that rice paper. I'm not worried about the edges, because I've just shown you that I can completely disguise these edges when I want to. So that can go into there, and we'll just leave that to dry. And we've got a butterfly on this piece, so this is just another piece of the rice paper, that same rice paper that I started out with. There we are. I've just tucked that on the corner. Hopefully that's now visible. Let's just have some of that water, she says. Pop that over there. So we're just using scraps, aren't we? We really are just using scraps at this point. Now that also will be too big, but that's okay. So this piece can then sit on the other side of here. Let's just grab that. There is a stencil that goes with this collection, but actually I'm not going to use it. So I'm not mithered about that hanging over, because I will sand off the excess. But I am going to seal it, and then we can let that dry. There we are. Okay. Pop that over there. That can go into there. We might need a better stamp. We might need a better ink pad than that one. So let us fish to here. Right. So I have a stamp from the collection, and it just says flower shop. So let's just pop that onto there. Let's do that. Let's get rid of that. Well, we're going to eyeball the centre. We're going to hope that this goes over and stamps nicely, because it is a bit of a wobbly surface for putting pressure on. Hey, I like it when a plan comes together. So that has worked quite nicely. That just adds a little bit of information there. And then we'll give that a little bit of a blast dry. As I say, that is, oh, let's just shut that glue so we don't blast that dry at the same time. Oops. Diversifying inks take a little bit to dry, don't they, because they're solvent based inks, and that's fine because it will withstand day to day wear and tear better than, you know, just an ordinary ink won't do that. It definitely is better off being heat set, so there's no question about it. Let's pop that over there. So, and then let's just see how well it's dried. So that's just my scrap card popped onto there, and I've lifted none, so I can be fairly sure that that is now set enough to manage. She says, showing stuff on the floor. There we are. So let's just take this, get rid of that bit. Get rid of the extra there. It's just adding just a little bit of interest to that corner. I'll add a little bit of interest to there. We can come in with some more paints in a minute. So let's just now take our paint. Where is that? That nasty scrubbly, oh, there's my scrubbly brush. So I've just got some bits, and let's just make a sludgy grey colour. And the reason I'm making a sludgy grey colour is actually because that is more sludgy grey at that edge of there. So that will help that blend into there. Yeah, and pop that into there. There we go. We are nearer that. Let's take a very, very soft green. Just add just a little bit more of that green into there. See, finger painting is cool, isn't it? Let's just take some of that onto there. Mix our edges in. I'm going to soften that flower. It's a bit bright or a bit dark relative to everything else. So now I can just use what's on my paint brush to tap it through and knock it back. There we are. And that's much more in keeping then with the rest of the piece. Okay, cool. So, do I want to leave it like that? Or do I want, I think I actually am going to leave it very simple. No, but where, oh, there it is. So there we are. We are going to have to add some, we'll be adding some splatters. Right, to do that I need that to be dry first. Looks like Old Town Biscuit Shop. Okay, I take that that's a compliment, Sophie. So let's just carry on our colour blending off around here. I'm not going to add lots of detail to the rest of the piece. I don't feel that the rest of the tray really needs masses and masses of blending in. additional detail. There we are. Sorry, there we are. There we are. We're going to get nice colour variation into there by mixing and matching. So let's just on here do what I quite often do. The sponge is just going to soften those colours into each other. There we are. Oh, something's falling on here. So the rice paper is Ciao Bella. It's an Italian company, and the collection is a flower shop. So if you want to wash this, you would then need to put a waterproof varnish over. So a solvent-based varnish will become waterproof because it's nature. But you can get those as spray varnishes, you can get them from Pentart, you could use wash it by Stamperia, there's lots of options. Or if you wanted, you could actually add resin to the bottom of the tray to really protect it. So the last thing I want to do for my tray, having seen an area that I splodged that I'm now no longer happy with on there, let's just pop that in. There we are. Fingers are really useful tools for blending things in with. There we are. There we are. There are some white splats here. So, and I haven't taken the white splats over the rest of it. And what the white splats are going to do is link everything together. Now, I'm semi-tempted to add a butterfly. Which we might take off this piece of paper. And then we might have to do a bit more colour blending, but hey ho. Okay. Right, let's get rid of as much of that white as possible without tearing the butterfly. Let's just take some decoupage glue. Hi Glynis, welcome darling. So what I'm doing is taking out that white area that was around there. There we are. Okie dokie. So I've got lots of paint scattered in here. So let me just find a fan brush. That paint's going to be going anyway, so I'm not bothered about adding lots of water to that. Let me just make this to a splatterable consistency, so single cream as opposed to ultra thick. Always test off your project. Tap gently. There we are. So there is our tray completed. So introductory basics to using rice papers for your projects and converting a portrait rice paper into one that will sit nicely into a landscape piece. It is so worth getting used to colour blending and building in your layers. So I hope that's been a useful live for you today. Please stay safe. Let me just, oh, she says, wiggling her computer wires that are not moving. There we are. Enjoy the week. Remember, Sharon Curtis has a Ciao Bella show on the, or two Ciao Bella shows on the 8th of July on Hobby Maker, and she's got the papers. And oh, I knew I'd forget something. So one of the things that I happen to know she's meant to have on the show is this, and it builds the house. Now I appreciate that that might look very scary because it's literally sheets of cardboard, papers, etc, etc. There is a video tutorial that goes with it, but I'm thinking that maybe if I might do this on a live in the next 2 or 3 weeks, so it might be worth looking out if you fancy a go at making a 3-dimensional project with a kit that's got everything together. Right, so Sharon is on the 8th and she has that on her show. I am back on the 12th, so that really is it for now. Please stay safe whatever you're up to, no matter what is going on. Try to make the most of the sun when it appears, and I will hopefully see you back online soon. Bye.